The forest was hushed beneath a blanket of snow. Not a harsh silence, not the heavy silence of loneliness, but a softer, gentler quiet. The kind that settles over the world when snowflakes fall steadily, unhurried, like tiny feathers drifting from the heavens. Each one landed without sound, layering the ground in white, filling in the gaps between the roots of trees, smoothing the roughness of branches until everything appeared softened, peaceful, and untouched. The air was cool but not cruel. It carried a crispness that tickled the nose and filled the lungs with freshness, like drinking from a mountain stream. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called softly, its voice muffled by the snow. The tall pine trees stood like guardians, their branches weighed down, bending slightly beneath the delicate load of frost. The world looked as though it had been painted anew, clean, fresh, and waiting for someone to step into its quiet story. Far off, between the trees, a warm glow shone. It flickered faintly at first, like a candle glimpsed through frosted glass. The closer one looked, the brighter it appeared, until the outline of a cabin revealed itself, tucked neatly into the heart of the snowy woods. Its roof wore a thick white hat of snow, and smoke curled lazily from a stone chimney, rising upward in twisting shapes before vanishing into the still winter sky. The windows glowed golden, like tiny suns against the night. The snow around them reflected the light, shimmering with a soft amber hue. From far away, the cabin looked like a small jewel buried in the vast whiteness of the forest. A place of warmth, a place of shelter, a place that promised comfort and safety against the long stretch of night. A figure moved slowly along the narrow path toward the cabin. Each step crunched faintly, the sound softened by the snow but still present, like a rhythm, steady and patient. The traveler's boots left deep prints behind, a winding trail that showed the journey they had taken through the woods. The cold nipped gently at their cheeks, painting them with a rosy glow. But it wasn't unpleasant. Instead, it was the kind of cold that made warmth feel all the more inviting. The traveler paused for a moment beneath the trees, gazing at the cabin ahead. There was something about it that felt timeless, as though it had always been there, waiting quietly for whoever needed it most. Its wooden walls, darkened by age but sturdy and strong, seemed to carry stories within their grain. Stories of winters past, of nights filled with laughter, of mornings warmed by firelight. A soft wind stirred the branches overhead, releasing a gentle flurry of snow that drifted down like stardust. The traveler tilted their head back, letting a few flakes land on their lashes, melting as quickly as they appeared. The sky above was deep and velvety, scattered with stars that peeked through gaps in the clouds. The moon, nearly full, hung low, casting a silver sheen across the landscape. The combination of moonlight and snow made the whole world glow, as if lit from within. Drawing their scarf tighter, the traveler began moving again, step by step, toward that inviting glow. Each step seemed to bring not only closeness to the cabin, but also a deepening sense of peace. It was as though the forest itself guided the way, the branches leaning just so, the snow on the ground smooth and welcoming, leading directly to the little haven. When the cabin stood only a few paces away, its details became clearer. The wooden door bore a small wreath, woven of pine branches, dried berries, and twigs. It was simple, handmade, and beautiful in its own quiet way. Along the window ledges, tiny icicles hung, catching the golden light from within and turning it into prisms that sparkled faintly. The smoke from the chimney carried a faint, comforting scent, with smoke mingled with something sweeter, perhaps cinnamon or pine resin, drifting into the night. The traveler stopped once more, taking in the sight. For a moment, there was no rush to go inside. Just standing there, with the hush of the woods surrounding them and the warm light spilling gently from the windows, felt like stepping into a dream where the worries of the world melted away as easily as snowflakes on warm skin. But soon the cold began to press closer, gently reminding them of the comfort that waited within. The traveler reached for the door, fingers brushing against the wooden handle, worn smooth from years of use. They paused, breathing in the stillness of the night one last time. The forest exhaled softly, as if bidding them a peaceful rest. With a quiet creak, the door began to open. Warmth spilled out instantly, wrapping around the traveler like a blanket, pulling them inside. The snow outside whispered on, continuing its soft fall, but within the cabin, a world of warmth and safety awaited, glowing, inviting, ready to tell its story. The moment the door drifted inward, a hush seemed to settle over the traveler's thoughts. It was not silence, for the forest was already quiet, but something gentler still, a sense of being welcomed, of being allowed to set down the weight of the day. The glow from the cabin spilled onto the snow, painting it in warm tones that shimmered and danced with the flicker of the fire inside. For just a moment longer, the traveler lingered on the threshold, standing halfway between two worlds. Behind them stretched the wide expanse of snowy woods, endless and serene, the kind of vastness that reminded one how small a single figure could be beneath the tall pines and endless stars. Ahead of them lay warmth, a place where the cold would remain only a memory, where the night would no longer feel quite so long. They breathed deeply, drawing in one last lungful of the night air before stepping fully inside. The warmth embraced them instantly. Even before their eyes adjusted, the sensation was like slipping into a familiar hug. The traveler closed the door behind them with a quiet thud, shutting out the winter, though not unkindly, more like gently folding a chapter closed. Inside, the air carried the fragrance of burning wood, mingled with something faintly sweet and earthy. It reminded them of pine needles, of old books, of simple comforts. They took a few slow steps forward, boots still dusted with snow, and let their gaze wander over the cabin's heart. The wooden beams of the ceiling stretched above, their surface smooth and dark from age. They gave the cabin a sense of strength, as though it had stood through countless winters and would stand through countless more. The floor creaked softly beneath their weight, but not unpleasantly, more like the friendly groan of an old companion acknowledging their presence. The traveler's eyes drifted toward the windows, where frost had painted delicate patterns along the glass. From inside, the snowy forest looked even more magical. Each tree outside was wrapped in white, the shapes blurred by the steady fall of snow. Yet, from within the cabin, it all seemed softened, like gazing out from a cocoon of warmth. And there it was again, that sense of safety, of being gently shielded from the world's harsher edges, the kind of comfort that invited you to breathe slower, to let your shoulders sink, to trust that all would be well, at least for this night. They stepped closer to the fire, where the flames danced with a steady, golden rhythm. The sound of crackling would fill the room, soft and hypnotic. Sparks occasionally leapt upward, only to vanish into the chimney above. The fire's light flickered across the walls, casting shifting shadows that seemed to sway like gentle storytellers, weaving their own wordless lullabies. The traveler reached out, holding their hands close to the warmth. Their fingers tingled as the chill began to ease, and soon their whole body relaxed, sinking into that glow. It was as though every part of them was being slowly unwound, each knot of tension loosening, until only calm remained. They set down their pack by the door and slipped off their boots, placing them neatly on the rug. Their socks met the wooden floor, warm from the fire, and they let out a long, contented sigh. Here, in this cabin, time itself seemed to soften. There was no rush, no urgency, only the steady rhythm of the fire and the quiet dance of snow outside the windows. The traveler turned back to the door for a moment, gazing at the wood, sturdy and closed, and felt an unshakable certainty that they were safe. Beyond those walls, the winter could stretch endlessly, but within, there was only warmth. It felt like finding an anchor, a harbor in the middle of the storm. Not that the storm was cruel, but that the harbor was kind. They walked slowly through the cabin, letting their fingers trail over the wooden furniture, polished smooth by years of care. A small table stood near the fire, draped in a simple cloth. On it sat a lantern, its glass catching the glow of the flames, amplifying the warmth around it. A kettle rested on the stove nearby, humming faintly as steam curled upward. Its soft whistle blended with the crackling fire, creating a lullaby of domestic sounds. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment, just listening. The steady rhythm of the fire, the gentle hiss of the kettle, the muffled fall of snow against the windows. Together, they formed a symphony of calm, each sound wrapping the listener in quiet reassurance. They thought of the path they had taken through the woods, the long walk beneath the whispering trees, the crunch of snow underfoot. It seemed distant now, softened in memory, as though it belonged to another world. This cabin, with its warm air and gentle glow, felt like stepping into a different realm, one where the cold could not reach, and where peace was not only possible but inevitable. At last, they settled into a wooden chair near the fire, its cushions soft and inviting. The chair creaked faintly as they leaned back, but in a way that felt comforting, as if it had welcomed many weary souls before. They stretched out their legs, wiggled their toes near the warmth, and let their eyes wander around the room once more. Every detail seemed to tell a story. The shelves filled with books, their spines warm but proud. The handmade quilt folded neatly at the edge of the sofa. The small rug woven in earthy tones, softened by countless footsteps. Even the faint scratches on the wooden floor spoke of lives lived, nights spent in laughter, mornings begun in quiet contentment. The traveler exhaled, long and slow. Already the heaviness of sleep tugged gently at their edges, though they knew the night still stretched ahead. That was the beauty of this place. There was time enough for rest, time enough for dreaming. Nothing needed to be hurried. Outside, the snow continued to fall, wrapping the world in a soft cocoon. Inside, the cabin glowed with warmth, a steady beacon against the night. And in that moment, as the fire flickered and the kettles sang, the traveler knew they had found more than shelter. They had found peace, woven into the very walls of the cozy cabin in the snowy woods. The firelight flickered gently, stretching golden arms across the walls of the cabin, painting everything in shades of amber and honey. Each corner of the room seemed to glow, as though the warmth of the hearth seeped into the very wood that held the place together. The traveler let their gaze wander slowly, drinking in every detail, every texture, as though their senses wanted to memorize the scene. The cabin was not grand, not large, but it held a richness that could not be measured in size. Its charm lay in its simplicity, in the way each object seemed chosen with care, with thought, with love. It was a space crafted not merely to exist, but to comfort. Near the fireplace, a woven rug stretched across the floor, its fibers soft and thick, carrying the faint scent of wool and earth. The traveler pressed their toes into it, savoring the contrast between its warmth and the memory of the cold snow outside. To one side of the rug sat a low wooden table. Upon it rested a clay bowl filled with pine cones, some painted with a dusting of white, others left natural, their earthy fragrance mingling with the scent of firewood. On the opposite side, a tall shelf stretched upward, stacked with books of every kind. Some had faded covers, their spines cracked from years of turning pages. Others were newer, still carrying the faint shine of fresh ink. Together, they told the story of many winters past, many nights spent reading while snow whispered at the windows. A small brass lantern sat on the top shelf, its light turned low but steady, casting a warm glow that mingled with the firelight. The traveler stood, moving slowly, carefully, as if each step were part of a quiet ritual. Their fingers brushed against the smooth wooden table, then along the spines of the books. Each one felt like a promise, of stories to unfold, of worlds to step into, of gentle escapes on nights much like this one. They paused at a window, gazing out. Frost had bloomed along the glass, delicate patterns curling like vines, catching the firelight and turning it into shimmering lace. Beyond the window lay the snowy woods, dark but peaceful, the snowflakes still falling in their steady rhythm. From inside, the scene felt softened, wrapped in a golden frame of warmth. A sound drew their attention, the soft whistle of the kettle on the stove. The traveler turned toward it, smiling faintly. The stove was small but sturdy, its surface warm and welcoming. Steam curled upward, carrying with it the fragrance of something soothing. They stepped closer, lifting the kettle carefully and pouring its contents into a waiting mug on the counter. The liquid was golden brown, its steam curling into the air with a scent of cinnamon, honey, and herbs. The traveler cradled the mug in both hands, letting the warmth seep into their palms. They brought it slowly to their lips, sipping carefully. The taste was gentle, soothing, the perfect blend of sweet and earthy, warming them from the inside out. They carried the mug back toward the fire, settling once more into the cushioned chair. As they leaned back, the fire crackled softly, a steady companion. They took another sip, then closed their eyes, letting the warmth of the drink and the steady glow of the room wash over them. For a while, they simply sat, breathing slowly, listening. The sounds of the cabin created a kind of music, subtle, unhurried. The fire popped softly, the wood shifting as it burned. The wind outside brushed gently against the windows, a low whisper, never forceful. The kettle sighed quietly as it cooled, no longer whistling but still humming faintly. Together, these sounds formed a lullaby of stillness. When the traveler opened their eyes again, they noticed details they had missed before. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a collection of small objects: a carved wooden bird, its wings spread as if mid-flight, a jar filled with smooth stones, each one polished to a gentle sheen, a small candle, its wick unlit, but ready to add its glow to the room when needed. Each item felt intentional, placed not for decoration alone, but for the comfort they carried. In the corner of the room stood a rocking chair draped with a quilt. The quilt was patchwork, made from pieces of fabric in different shades: deep blues, soft creams, warm reds. Its patterns told a story, each square holding its own history, stitched together with care. The traveler imagined the countless nights that quilt had warmed someone, the way it had wrapped them in safety as they drifted off to sleep. Beside the rocking chair, a small basket rested on the floor. Inside, neatly folded, were skeins of yarn and a pair of knitting needles. The sight brought a smile to the traveler's face. There was something so gentle about the thought of someone sitting here, knitting quietly as the snow fell outside, each stitch adding warmth to the world. The air inside the cabin carried layers of fragrance: pine wood, cinnamon, wool, the faint sweetness of honey. It was the kind of scent that belonged to a place, woven into its walls, carried forward through the years. Breathing it in was like breathing in comfort itself. The traveler finished their tea, setting the mug gently on the low table. Their body felt heavy now, not with weariness, but with ease, as though every muscle had surrendered to the warmth around them. They pulled the quilt from the rocking chair, draping it over their lap as they settled deeper into the cushioned chair by the fire. The quilt was soft, its fabric warmed quickly by their body heat. They traced the stitching with their fingertips, feeling the gentle bumps where one piece of fabric met another. It reminded them of the cabin itself, a patchwork of small details, each one simple, but together forming something whole, something beautiful. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, time seemed to slow. The fire crackled, the shadows danced, and the cabin wrapped itself around the traveler like a lullaby. They let their eyes wander once more over the room, feeling as though every corner whispered reassurance. The shelves of books promised stories for tomorrow. The quilt on their lap promised warmth through the night. The fire promised light until sleep arrived. And in that moment, the traveler realized something quiet but profound. The cabin was more than walls and wood. It was a keeper of peace, a guardian of rest. It did not demand anything. It did not hurry or push. It simply held space, a space where one could breathe, one could be, one could rest. The traveler leaned back further, quilt tucked under their chin, eyelids heavy but content. The firelight painted their features in soft gold, and the room, with all its quiet treasures, seemed to breathe along with them. The cabin had welcomed them, embraced them, and now it held them in its gentle stillness. Inside the cabin, the world was warm, safe, and endlessly calm. The evening unfolded gently, as though the cabin itself set the pace, slow and unhurried. The fire continued its steady song, crackling with each shifting log, filling the room with a golden light that softened every shadow. The traveler, wrapped in the quilt, felt as if they had stepped outside the march of time, entering a space where only calmness mattered. They leaned deeper into the chair, closing their eyes for a moment, simply listening. The sounds were few but perfectly balanced. The whisper of snow brushing against the window, the occasional sigh of the wind threading between the trees, the fire's steady rhythm, and beneath it all, the hush of the cabin, like the gentle heartbeat of a place alive with quiet presence. The warmth lulled them into stillness, but before long, a soft movement stirred at the edge of the rug. The traveler opened their eyes and smiled faintly. A small, Tabby Cat had appeared, its fur striped in shades of gray and brown, its eyes the pale green of spring leaves. It padded silently across the wooden floor, tail curled upward like a question mark. The cat paused by the traveler's chair, lifting its head as if to study the newcomer. After a brief moment, it leapt lightly onto the traveler's lap, circling once before curling into a ball atop the quilt. Its body radiated warmth, its purr deep and steady, vibrating through the fabric into the traveler's hands. The sound was soft, hypnotic, like the hum of distant waves or the murmur of bees in summer. The traveler stroked the cat gently, fingers sinking into its thick fur. The purr deepened, and the cat pressed closer, utterly content. The companionship felt natural, as though the cat had been waiting for this very moment, ready to share the evening with quiet devotion. They sat together like that for a long while, firelight flickering over them, the cabin cradling them both in its hush. The warmth of the cat, the weight of the quilt, and the glow of the fire blended into a single sensation of comfort so deep it seemed to anchor the traveler in the present moment. Eventually, the cat stirred, stretching with a luxurious arch of its back before hopping down onto the rug. It padded toward the hearth, settling into a tight circle on the warm wool. The traveler smiled, sipping once more from their mug, now filled with fresh tea steeped in herbs from a small jar on the counter. The taste was soothing, lavender, chamomile, and a hint of mint. Each sip seemed to ease their thoughts further, smoothing the edges of the day until nothing sharp remained. Their mind drifted like snowflakes in the wind, light and aimless, touching on memories and dreams with the same softness that filled the cabin. They thought of the path that had led them here, the long walk through the snowy woods. At the time, each step had seemed endless, the forest vast and quiet, the night deep and wide. But now, those steps felt purposeful, each one carrying them closer to this moment, to this warm chair, to this glowing fire. It was as if the forest itself had guided them, leading them to the safe harbor of the cabin. The traveler rose slowly from the chair, quilt draped around their shoulders like a cloak. They moved quietly, respecting the hush of the evening. On the table beside the rocking chair lay a small notebook, its cover worn but cared for. Curiosity drew them closer. They lifted it gently, opening to a page filled with handwriting, tidy, looping letters that carried a kind of grace. The words were simple reflections, notes of gratitude for small things. The way the snow sparkled under the moon, the joy of hearing the first bird sing in the morning, the comfort of warm bread and butter shared with a friend. Each entry felt like a gift, a reminder of how beauty could be found in even the smallest of moments. The traveler read a few lines, then closed the book softly, placing it back exactly where it had been. The discovery left them thoughtful, warmed not only by the fire, but by the reminder that peace could be gathered in everyday details. Returning to the chair, they tucked the quilt back around themselves, letting their bodies sink into the cushions. The cat, still curled near the fire, blinked slowly at them before closing its eyes again, slipping into sleep. The traveler watched the flames, letting their gaze soften. The fire seemed almost alive, its movements graceful and fluid, shifting endlessly, yet always remaining steady. They imagined the flames telling stories, silent tales of ancient forests, of sparks born from lightning, of warmth shared by countless generations. The logs hissed softly as sap burned away, releasing a faint, sweet fragrance. Each sound, each flicker, seemed designed to soothe, to quiet the restless corners of the mind. The traveler stretched their legs, feeling the softness of the rug beneath their feet. Their body was heavy now, but it was the kind of heaviness that came from safety, from knowing there was nothing more required of them tonight. They let themselves relax fully, shoulders sinking, breath slowing. Time passed unnoticed, as it often does when peace is absolute. Perhaps an hour drifted by, or perhaps only minutes. The traveler could not tell, nor did they care. The evening flowed like a gentle stream, carrying them along with no need to resist. At one point, they rose again, padding quietly to the kitchen area. A loaf of bread sat on the counter, wrapped in cloth. They sliced a piece, spreading it with butter from a small jar. The bread was soft, the butter cool and creamy. The simple taste filled them with comfort. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, each chew, as though there was no need to hurry. Returning once more to the fire, they found the cat had shifted in its sleep, stretching out to expose its belly, paws twitching faintly as if chasing something in a dream. The traveler smiled, pulling the quilt closer, tucking themselves in like a child ready for bed. The glow of the fire bathed the room in shifting gold. Shadows danced across the shelves, across the books, across the mantel with its carved bird and jar of stones. The cabin felt alive, not in a bustling way, but in a gentle, watchful way, as if it was quietly caring for its guest. The traveler let their eyes close, just for a moment, listening to the rhythm of the evening. The cat's purr returned, blending with the fire's crackle, the snow's soft fall, and the sigh of the wind outside. Together, the sounds wove into a lullaby, drawing them deeper into relaxation. They did not fall fully asleep yet, but they hovered near its edge, that liminal place where thoughts blur into dreams. In that half-dreaming state, the cabin seemed to shimmer. The fire's glow grew softer, warmer, and the snow outside glittered faintly, as though touched by starlight. And so the gentle evening passed, unhurried, timeless, wrapped in warmth and safety. The traveler, quilted and content, surrendered to the rhythm of the night, knowing that in this cabin, surrounded by snow and silence, there was nothing but peace. The fire in the cabin had reached that perfect stage where the logs glowed with a steady, amber warmth, their edges ringed with soft embers that pulsed like tiny stars. The steady rhythm of the flames had become a lullaby of its own, crackling in gentle intervals, whispering a language older than words. Outside, the snow still fell, but it was hushed now, a faint curtain of silver drifting across the night sky. I leaned back into the armchair, a soft quilt drawn around me, and let the weight of the evening press gently against my body. My eyelids grew heavier, and as they fluttered shut, I felt myself sinking, not into sleep just yet, but into a tender place between waking and dreaming. The sound of the fire grew softer, until it seemed to melt into something else. The rustle of trees, the whisper of snowflakes falling on branches, and the distant call of an owl in the woods. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer seated in the chair, but standing just outside the cabin door. Strangely, I felt no chill. The snow beneath my boots gave way without resistance, and each flake that fell onto my shoulders melted instantly, vanishing into warmth instead of cold. The night air shimmered faintly, as if the whole forest was lit not only by the moon, but by something deeper, an inner glow that belonged to the woods themselves. The trees stood tall around me, their branches heavy with snow, yet they did not bend with burden. Instead, they stood like silent guardians, protective and kind. The air was rich with the scent of pine, mingled with a sweetness that reminded me of honey. And then I saw them, gentle figures, just beyond the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought they were shadows, but as they stepped forward, I recognized them as animals. A deer emerged first, her coat silvery in the moonlight, her dark eyes calm and watchful. Behind her padded a fox, its fur a deep russet that glowed like fire against the snow. A family of rabbits followed, their little ears twitching curiously, and above them, an owl floated down from a tree, landing with soft precision in the snow. They looked at me with quiet recognition, as though they had been waiting for my arrival. The deer lowered her head slightly, as if in greeting, and I felt an invisible invitation pull at me. Without fear, I stepped forward, my boots crunching softly in the snow, though the sound seemed to vanish before it could echo. The animals formed a gentle circle around me, not enclosing, but welcoming. The fox approached first. Its eyes, bright and clever, met mine, and I felt a wave of warmth flow through me. Though the fox never spoke with words, its meaning reached me clearly, as if carried on the stillness of the night. Come, there is something you must see. And so I followed. The animals began to move in unison, padding through the snow, as if they had rehearsed this journey many times before. Their tracks left delicate impressions in the whiteness, though even as I looked back, I saw them vanish almost immediately, as though the forest was gently erasing the marks, keeping the path hidden and sacred. We moved deeper into the woods. The trees seemed to lean closer, not to frighten, but to shelter us, their snowy arms arching into a natural cathedral. Moonlight spilled between the branches, silver and soft, bathing the snow in a glow so pure it felt otherworldly. As we walked, the world grew quieter still. I could hear my own breathing, steady and calm, and the rhythmic sound of paws and hooves against the snow. Yet beneath these sounds, I sensed something greater, a heartbeat, vast and deep, pulsing through the forest itself. The deer slowed her pace and stopped beside a wide clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree, larger than any I had ever seen. Its trunk was massive, its bark textured with age, and from its branches hung icicles that shimmered like crystal. The roots spread out across the snowy ground, glowing faintly as though they carried a hidden fire within them. The owl perched on one of its lower branches, and the forest animals gathered at its base. I felt drawn forward, my heart beating in rhythm with that vast forest pulse. The fox looked at me again, and without words, I understood. This was no ordinary tree. It was the heart of the woods, the quiet soul that kept the snow gentle, the nights peaceful, and the silence kind. I placed a hand against the bark, and warmth spread into me. Not the heat of fire, but something deeper, something alive. It was the warmth of belonging, of being connected to every branch, every snowflake, every breath of wind. I felt my own worries dissolve, like frost melting in sunlight. Time no longer mattered. Only this moment existed, timeless and tender. Then, something extraordinary happened. The snow around us began to shimmer, lifting slightly as though caught in an invisible breeze. The flakes twirled in spirals, forming patterns in the air, weaving themselves into shapes. Stars, rivers, gentle waves of light. It was as though the forest was telling its story through the snow, and we were witnesses to its dream. The rabbits huddled close to one another, their small noses twitching in delight. The fox sat down, curling its tail neatly around its paws, eyes glinting with wonder. The deer raised her head gracefully, as though she had always known this magic was here, and the owl spread its wings slightly, the movement stirring the snowy air like a quiet blessing. I stood within it all, not an outsider, but part of the story itself. The patterns of snow shifted again, and I saw visions. A cabin standing through many winters, its windows glowing for travelers who sought shelter. The trees stretching tall and strong, year after year, their branches reaching toward the stars. The animals guiding wanderers safely through storms, never letting them feel alone. It was then I realized the cabin was not just a place, but a gift from the forest. It was built on the heart of this land, cradled by the kindness of the trees, and watched over by the creatures who lived here. The warmth inside it was more than fire. It was the warmth of the woods themselves, offering comfort to all who found it. The snow slowly settled, drifting back to the ground with a softness that felt like a lullaby. The glow around the tree dimmed gently, though not fading entirely. It would always be there, quietly alive, holding the forest together. The animals began to move once more, turning back toward the direction of the cabin. The fox gave me a final glance, its eyes filled with quiet wisdom, and I understood that the journey was not to end here. It was meant to lead me back, carrying the memory of this dream into the warmth of the cabin. As I followed them, the path seemed shorter, the trees opening wide to reveal the cabin once again. Its windows glowed golden in the night, smoke still curling from the chimney, as though no time had passed. I stepped inside, the door closing softly behind me, and found myself once again in the armchair by the fire. The quilt was still around my shoulders, the logs still glowing in the hearth. Had I ever left? Perhaps my body had stayed, while my spirit wandered through the woods. Or perhaps the forest had entered my dreams to remind me that I was never truly alone. I settled deeper into the chair, the memory of the ancient tree and the gentle animals lingering like a sweet fragrance. My heartbeat was calm now, in harmony with the vast, steady pulse I had felt in the woods. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, the cabin held me in its embrace, and though my eyes were heavy, though sleep was close, I carried with me the dream of the forest, a dream of belonging, of safety, of being part of something infinitely kind. The night had grown deeper, wrapping the forest in layers of soft, silver moonlight. The snowfall outside slowed to a quiet hush, as though even the clouds themselves were ready to rest. Inside the cabin, the warmth held steady, the fire glowing a little softer now, its light flickering gently against the wooden walls. The air was still, calm, and filled with the quiet crackle of embers settling into a gentle rhythm. The traveler sat back in the chair by the fire, feeling the weight of the evening sink into every muscle. The warmth was no longer just around them, but inside them, soaking deep into tired bones, into the very center of the chest, where all tension began to melt away. Each breath came slower now, deeper, steadier. Inhale warmth, exhale release. The cat, curled tightly in its circle of fur, let out a long sigh of contentment. Its whiskers twitched lightly, already drifting into dreams of its own. The dog by the hearth stretched once, paws brushing against the rug, before settling into stillness again, chest rising and falling in a rhythm that matched the soft beat of the room. The traveler looked around the cabin one last time, letting their eyes linger on the things that had brought such peace. The books waiting on the shelves, the wool blankets draped across the arm of the couch, the shadows of pine branches swaying against the frosted glass of the window. Every detail carried a story of comfort, of care, of a place built not just for shelter, but for stillness of heart. Slowly, the fire dimmed, its flames lowering into glowing embers, casting a softer light, almost like candle glow. It was not the kind of darkness that brought unease. It was the kind of darkness that invited the body to let go. A safe darkness, a protective one, like a quilt drawn gently over the shoulders of the night. The traveler shifted, lying back into the softness of a thick blanket. The pillow beneath their head carried the faint scent of pine and lavender, a calming blend that made the eyelids grow heavy. The warmth of the bed hugged them closely, like an embrace from the cabin itself, whispering in its own way, "You are safe. You are warm. You are home." Thoughts slowed to a trickle. The mind, once wandering through snowy forests and dreamlike journeys, now rested like the still waters of a lake at dawn. The cabin became not just a place in the woods, but a state of being, peace that would linger through sleep and beyond. The last image before sleep came was of the window, glowing faintly with the reflection of moonlight on snow. It was a gentle reminder that while the world outside was wide and cold, there would always be havens of warmth and safety waiting within. Breath by breath, the traveler let go completely. The cabin seemed to sigh with him, the wood creaking softly as if to say, "Rest now, everything is well." The fire pulsed one last ember of gold, and then settled into its quiet, steady glow. Sleep drifted in like the snow outside, slow, soft, inevitable, and deeply peaceful. Wrapped in the cocoon of warmth, the traveler surrendered to dreams, knowing the cabin would hold them safely until morning light kissed the frosted world anew. Sparkles, and now, dear listener, as you rest with this story, let your own body soften into comfort. Close your eyes, feel the calm settle in, and allow yourself to drift into the peaceful sleep you deserve. If you enjoyed this bedtime journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more soothing stories, and share it with someone who might need a little extra calm tonight. Sweet dreams. Crescent Moon ZZZ.